Forecasters just made it official. The severe weather threat that has been building across the country did not ease up this week. It expanded, and now it is stacking on top of a second dangerous hazard that most people have not even started paying attention to yet. According to the latest forecast discussion from the National Weather Service, strong to severe thunderstorms are expected across the northern to central plains and the upper Midwest today, shifting further south and east as the day goes on. At the exact same time, dangerous heat continues to grip the southeast and southwest, and forecasters have now flagged an elevated to critical fire weather threat across parts of the west. The AT is 3 separate serious hazards unfolding across 3 different regions on the very same day, and it does not stop there. Extended forecasts released just yesterday show a major heat wave building across the southeast and north-central United States heading into this weekend and early next week, with forecasters specifically warning of major heat risk concerns developing as a broad upper-level ridge expands and strengthens over the central U.S. In other words, just as one severe weather threat starts to ease in one region, an even more dangerous heat threat is already forming to take its place somewhere else. So let's break down exactly what changed, why this particular combination of hazards is so dangerous, and why forecasters are treating this stretch of weather with more urgency than a typical summer pattern. Let's start with today's severe thunderstorm threat, since it is the most immediate danger for millions of people. A slow-moving frontal boundary stretching across the northern plains into the upper Midwest is the focus for developing thunderstorms, some of which are expected to become strong to severe with large hail and damaging winds, especially from the Montana and Wyoming high plains eastward into southern Minnesota. As that boundary shifts today, the greatest potential for severe thunderstorms moves farther south and east, extending from the upper Great Lakes down into the central plains. This kind of shifting, multi-day, severe weather setup is exactly what makes forecasting and preparation so difficult right now. It is not one storm system passing through and then clearing out. It is a rolling, multi-day threat that keeps redeveloping across a wide swath of the country, meaning communities that avoided severe weather yesterday could easily find themselves directly in the path today or tomorrow. Meteorologists tracking this pattern point out that the boundary driving today's storms is not simply going to dissipate once this round of thunderstorms clears. Slow-moving frontal boundaries like this one tend to linger for days, acting as a repeated trigger point for new thunderstorm development each afternoon as fresh heating and moisture interact with the boundary. That is part of why forecasters are describing this as an extended threat rather than a single-day event, since the same general corridor from the northern plains through the upper Midwest and into the central plains could see renewed severe weather potential on multiple consecutive days. Now let's talk about the heat threat, because this is where things get genuinely alarming. Climate Prediction Center forecasters have specifically flagged a high risk of extreme heat across portions of the northern plains and upper Mississippi Valley for the middle of next week, along with a moderate risk of extreme heat stretching from the Great Plain S through the Mississippi Valley, the Southeast, and the Carolinas. A broad area of extreme heat is expected to expand across the western, central, and eventually eastern United States as this ridge strengthens and essentially locks itself in place. Here is why that matters so much. A ridge of high pressure that parks itself over a region does not just bring hot weather, it actively traps that heat in place day after day, preventing the kind of cooling relief that usually comes with a passing weather system. When that ridge finally does break down, as we have seen repeatedly this year, it tends to unleash a fresh round of severe thunderstorms as all that trapped heat and energy gets released at once, which means this is not simply back-to-back unrelated hazards. It is a repeating cycle, heat building, then breaking violently into severe weather, then rebuilding again days later somewhere else. Meanwhile, out west, an entirely different kind of danger is intensifying. Forecasters have flagged elevated to critical fire weather conditions across portions of the region, driven by the same broad ridge of high pressure responsible for the extreme heat. Hot, dry conditions combined with low humidity create exactly the environment wildfires need to ignite and spread rapidly. And as if that were not enough, the southwest monsoon season is now beginning to kick in, which brings its own complicated risk. Monsoon thunderstorms can produce what meteorologists call dry lightning that strikes without meaningful rainfall reaching the ground beneath it, which is one of the most common ways new wildfires actually start in the region. It is worth understanding why dry lightning is considered such a uniquely dangerous ignition source. A typical thunderstorm drops enough rain to dampen the ground it strikes, limiting the chance that a lightning strike sparks a lasting fire. But in the earliest stages of monsoon season, storms often form high I. On a dry atmosphere, and the rain produced by those storms can evaporate before it ever reaches the ground, a phenomenon meteorologists call virga, that leaves behind the lightning without the rainfall that would normally accompany it, striking parched vegetation that has spent weeks or months baking under an intense ridge of high pressure. It is, in a very real sense, the worst possible combination for wildfire ignition. At the same time, when monsoon moisture does produce heavier rainfall, forecasters are already watching for a slight risk of heavy precipitation across the central and southern Rockies and the desert Southwest in the days ahead, raising the potential for flash flooding in areas that, just days earlier, were dealing with extreme heat and fire danger. Going from drought-level dryness to sudden flash flooding within the same week is a genuinely difficult scenario for both residents and emergency responders to manage. There is a specific reason this whiplash between drought and flash flooding is so dangerous, beyond the obvious shock of the transition. Soil that has been baked by weeks of extreme heat becomes hardened and far less able to absorb water quickly, a condition sometimes called hydrophobic soil. When intense monsoon rainfall finally arrives, instead of soaking into the ground the way it normally would, that water runs off the surface almost immediately, dramatically increasing flash flood risk in exactly the same canyons, washes, and low-lying areas that were parched and fire-prone just days earlier. This is precisely why flash flood warnings in the desert Southwest during monsoon season should never be taken lightly, even in a region best known for its dry climate. If this breakdown is helping you understand exactly how serious this week's weather pattern has become, do me a favor and tap that like button. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this one. Let's zoom out for a second, because the bigger picture here is what should really concern you. This year has already seen an extraordinarily active, severe weather season across large parts of the country, with some regions tracking their most active tornado season in over a decade. Combine that with a summer defined by repeated heat domes, back-to-back rounds of severe thunderstorms, and a wildfire season that is only just beginning to ramp up in the West, and you get a weather pattern that is demanding constant attention rather than the occasional glance at a forecast app. Insurance analysts have started sounding the alarm on this exact trend as well, pointing out that a huge number of homeowners remain significantly underinsured for the specific combination of hazards their region now actually faces. A home in the upper Midwest might be adequately covered for hail damage but have no flood coverage at all. A home in the Southwest might be prepared for wildfire risk but completely unprepared for the kind of sudden flash flooding that monsoon season increasingly brings. As these hazards increasingly overlap in the same regions, within the same weeks, insurance gaps that used to be minor oversights are becoming genuinely costly blind spots. This overlapping risk is exactly what recent industry coverage has started calling out directly, with several major outlets now, publishing guidance specifically aimed at homeowners who assume their existing policy already covers every hazard their region faces. In reality, standard homeowner policies frequently exclude flood damage entirely, regardless of whether that flooding comes from a hurricane, a monsoon downpour, or a slow-moving thunderstorm complex, which means a policyholder can be fully covered for wind and hail while remaining completely exposed to the water damage that so often accompanies those same storms. So what should you actually do with all of this information, depending on where you live? If you are in the path of today's severe thunderstorm threat across the upper Midwest or Central Plains, treat any warning that reaches your phone as an immediate call to action, since large hail and damaging winds can develop and arrive with very little advance notice. If you are in the southeast, southwest, or north central states facing this, weekends building heat, take it seriously well before it peaks, checking on elderly neighbors and relatives and never leaving children or pets in a parked vehicle even for a few minutes. If you are out west, stay alert for any fire weather warnings in your area, and understand that dry lightning from monsoon storms can spark a wildfire without a single drop of rain reaching the ground near you. And no matter where you live, this is a good moment to actually check what your insurance policy covers, rather than assuming it matches the risks your region is currently facing. A 5-minute phone call now could save you an enormous amount of stress if one of these hazards, heat, severe storms, wildfire, or flash flooding, ends up affecting your home this summer. It is also worth building a simple habit that costs nothing but a few minutes each morning during a stretch of weather like this one, checking the specific forecast for your exact area rather than relying on a general sense of what the season is supposed to look like. Regional outlooks like this one can shift day to day as boundaries move, ridges strengthen or weaken, and monsoon moisture surges in. Unpredictable pulses, which means the safest approach right now is treating each day as its own forecast, rather than assuming yesterday's conditions will simply repeat themselves. Here's the pattern that ties all of this together. A stronger, more persistent ridge of high pressure builds extreme heat in one region while simultaneously feeding fire. Danger in another. That same ridge eventually breaks down, unleashing severe thunderstorms capable of large hail and destructive winds. And in the meantime, monsoon moisture surges into the southwest, creating a volatile mix of dry lightning risk and sudden flash flood potential, sometimes within the very same forecast window. This is not 4 separate weather stories. This is one interconnected, escalating pattern playing out across the entire country at once. That is exactly why this threat just got worse, and why forecasters are treating this stretch of weather with more urgency than usual. It is not a single storm to watch and then forget about. It is a rolling, compounding pattern of extreme heat, severe thunderstorms, wildfire risk, and flash flooding, all feeding into each other, all demanding your attention at the same time. Forecasters themselves have described this kind of setup as historically difficult to communicate to the public precisely because no single dramatic image captures it the way a hurricane satellite loop or a tornado on the ground does. There is no single moment to point a camera at. Instead, the danger is spread out across days, across regions, and across hazard types, which makes it every bit as serious as a single major storm, even though it rarely gets covered with the same urgency. If this video helped you understand exactly what is unfolding across the country right now, make sure you are subscribed, because there's a lot more of this kind of breakdown coming, and you will not want to miss it.